doing something while you're recording.
Well, we're
Ladies and
just
gentlemen,
went live.
welcome to the End Time Tribune. We're your hosts, Brian Ingram, Joe Muzidla, and Matthew Miller. Today, just been really off the hook. I've been watching it, especially Joe and I has been talking about in the background that I thought what they were going to try to do would be take the Trump presidency and absolutely wipe it back to zero, and that's actually what we've seen. Today the low was the Dow was 19,000 and some change. So a whole lot of things going on, in the heavens that's happening right here for the equinox on the 19th, which has also been news of late. That why isn't it on the 21st? What's going on? Why isn't it the 20th? So even the Old Farmer's Almanac has published articles on why this equinox is so early. But you and I both know that me and Brian had it proved a couple of years ago when there was not the amount of right days between the solstice and the equinox. It was more than 181 days. Something was terribly wrong. And so these things have been multiplying and magnifying. And then we have this strange coronavirus, war, I guess, that's happening across the planet. On top of this, we have all these CEOs that are resigning now. So let's pass the mic over to Brian and let's get his take on just the past couple of weeks. Well, let me do this. Brian, why do you think our response was so slow toward the coronavirus outbreak?
Well, it was, for lack of better words, a lack of common sense. Many in our administration were trying to say it was a conspiracy. They didn't even attempt to do anything until multiple cases started landing on the United States soil. It was not handled properly in the slightest, and we're now seeing the repercussions of it. There's a lack of testing supplies. There's a lack of masks. There's a lack of the robes that they properly need in these hospitals, not to even mention the hospitals are going to be flooded. So, and making matters worse, on the opposite side of the spectrum, a lot of the citizens are going out and hoarding everything they can get their hands on, be it for themselves or so they can turn around and sell it on eBay. And it's turned into a nightmare for, like our household, we live month to month. And it's just a nightmare on our end right now.
Joe, what's your thoughts on the response to the coronavirus?
That's an interesting question. Very slow response to it. To me, from personal sources, of one individual that literally traveled very, very recently within the last couple of weeks from here to Japan and back. The response was much greater in Japan, ahead of even the U.S. When this individual arrived in Japan, they weren't allowed to come into the country until they were quarantined, literally right off the plane, checked, made sure that they weren't running a fever, anything like that. Then they were allowed to go into the country, but even the businesses and bars or whatever, clubs, they had those little temperature testers. Basically, they were you had to have your temperature checked before you could go in to even a facility, whatever it was, where there was going to be a mass of people. Coming back to the U.S., nothing. They weren't even asked any questions. They just waltzed right into the U.S., and he was very shocked, the individual I spoke with. And so, yeah, I would. To me, it almost, whether they dropped the ball or it was deliberate. That's a good question.
Well, something seriously was amuck. Well, for one thing, we can't fail to mention everything that was happening with the impeachment. That's just absolutely undeniable that the impeachment, or, well, better put, to say that the entire government was in the middle of major proceedings. Whether you think that's good or bad, that's irrelevant. This thing happened right in the middle of this quagmire. That's disturbing to me. But a lot of things just don't make sense, like the amount of fatalities that we've had. So far, this doesn't justify anything being of epidemic proportions as far as the numbers go. Now, it certainly could turn that way very quickly. But what really worries me is behind all of that mess, we have all these CEOs leaving. Just off the hook. We have, Bill Gates, Microsoft. We have Lockheed Martin. We have Disney. Something serious is seriously wrong with that. Joe, you and I have talked about that. Do you have any theories as to why so many CEOs are leaving? I mean, even Harley Davidson. We've had this quarter catastrophic CEOs just leaving. It's off the hook. What's your thoughts?
Thoughts on that? This goes clear back to 2019 when this actually started. I was trying to look at the dates here, but this started, I think it ended up at the end of the year around 1,100, and now we're at over 1,300 CEOs. And then, of course, one of the ones that I was shocked to see was Bill Gates stepping down. In another article that I found was quoting him as also talking about in his public discussions here recently in 2015 and 2017 about a global pandemic, and that this country, as well as the rest of the world, is not ready for it. So I found that to be an interesting article. But, to say 1,300, that's a heck of a lot. That's in 2008, what was it, 1,100? So we've shot way over them in 2008 when the market crashed. But the very strange thing about this was they were starting to leave while the numbers were high. And that is what kind of throws a wrench in the whole thing, is that these individuals were splitting their jobs, many of them leaving with their bonuses and whatever else that they had signed, whatever their contract was, that the contract was not null and void. They left with their bonuses and everything else. So to me, this is kind of telling that something was on the horizon. So yeah, that one, when you look at all the information, it's actually kind of chilling.
Brian, what's your thoughts? Just why do you think all these CEOs are leaving? Do you think that's random, or do you think that they knew something that hasn't happened yet is going to happen? What's your thoughts, Brian?
Well, I mean, if you look at the writing on the wall from the last few years, I mean, ever since the Trump presidency started, we've watched the stock market just go up, down, on a continual basis. But then obviously when you get into 2019 and then zoom forward to 2020 with what's happening now, to a degree, I would have to say, yeah, they must recognize the trends within what's happening to know that something far worse is yet to come. And it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse on a continual daily basis here. I mean, I can't even imagine what it's going to be sitting at just come tomorrow even.
Well, gentlemen, we have to admit this. Everybody's heard me talk about this, and I've said this several times before, but I'll say it again. The last major city that we lived in, they graduated 3,500 students. That very same municipality that very year lost 2,000 jobs. And we've been doing that for decades. Now, just last year, the IRS released the statistics that most of the 18 to 34-year-olds have to live at home because they can't sustain their own households. This is true. This is past tense. These things are already known. With that in mind, I think that Brian probably plays the best hand. They're probably just looking at the trends and they're like, it's not sustainable anymore. It's just not sustainable. They know that. They see it coming. So they're running out the back door. What did the coronavirus have to do with this? I don't think anything. I think this has turned into like these storms we've had out over the Atlantic that seem to merge, and the Pacific as well. They seem to merge into one great big storm, and it just gets crazy. But there's a whole lot going on there, and we've also talked about the signs that's been occurring in the heavens, which is off the hook. But when you take a look at the summer solstice, or at the equinox that's getting ready to happen, you have to realize that, well, there is a major conjunction that happens on this very day, on this very equinox. And it's very ominous. It's very ominous because you have the sign of the Son of Man hooking up with the sign of war. And not only that, within hours, one into another, you have the Father Star, or the sign of the Father, hooking up with the faithful witness and witnessing this event in the sign of the cherub that guards the galactic core. It's off the hook to look at, to witness. Let's take a look at it right now. This, ladies and gentlemen, you're looking at the very day. Here we have the date for you. We're going to scroll it forward by the hour. This is the first hour of the equinox. You see that Jupiter and Mars, this is the exact time when they are at their closest, they conjunct. And of course here is the faithful witness, the moon, and the sign of the Father, the sign of the Son of Man, and of course the sign of war. So looking at this is absolutely off the hook, that when you progress through the day, you realize everything that just happens. This is a magnificent sign right here in the very crux. And let's get back to where the faithful witness is bearing witness with the Father. Right here's the galactic core. Right here it is. This, of course, being Sagittarius, the sign of the cherub. So, when you really do take a look at this sign happening, well, it's going to happen this very night. It's going to begin. They hook up soon after midnight. This is off the hook that all these things are happening on the ground. And we're not talking about regionally. We're talking about globally. Brian, is it not true that now we've got more than one country completely locked down?
There's several. I know that, well, it's getting to the point that it's all of them that are not letting any outsiders in. Because, I mean, we're even talking about completely 100% closing the borders here in the United States. Like Italy, for instance, is having major problems. And I'm fairly certain they've closed things down. France, I know, has been having a lot going on. And not certain about Germany or not. It's the first time I saw Germany chime in was earlier today with one of these war comments.
And listen, so you agree, Brian? You have bore witness that this is not got anything to do with the United States. This thing is on the whole planet, and that's exactly what we would be looking for if we had involvement of the four riders. Correct? This would be a global event.
Yes.
So, with that in mind, I looked before the program as I was waiting. While I was waiting, I was on the laptop looking at these. I just did a keyword search in news for war. Brian, you're the one that informed me of this. Why is everybody talking about a war footing or a war posturing? What's your thoughts?
Well, that remains to be the question. I mean, and it freaked me out today because I got up and these are just the first articles I pulled up in Reuters. Every one of them bringing up war. Merkel tells Germans fighting virus demands wartime solidarity. Rattled world at war with coronavirus as deaths surge in Italy and France. Trump says he will invoke wartime act to fight enemy coronavirus. You just don't make this stuff up. I mean, I couldn't even believe it. I didn't know what I was going to go with here tonight for certain, and then I get up today and it's just sitting there on a platter waiting for me.
And ladies and gentlemen, you're looking at Brian's Twitter feed. It's basically second to none if you're wanting to get the feed. As you can see here, it's the Bands of Time on Twitter, and that is the nomenclature. It is the Bands of Time at Twitter. I strongly suggest you get over there and look at, and he's exactly correct. There's no way around it. There's just no way around it. Multiple countries, and even today we had this Production Act enacted from 1950s that was due to the Korean War. We had trouble producing things, so they wrote up this Production Act in 1950. This is off the hook. I can't see any justification for enacting or even using the phraseology that the United States is taking up a war footing. That's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. But yet we really have had here recently, in real time, things going on, especially in Syria, that just off the hook. You had Turkey going head to head with possibly Russia, and nobody was playing around, but we seem to keep that underneath the rug. It was really whitewashed by the impeachment, no doubt about it. It was just impeachment, and we had serious gameplay on the ground and in the air in Syria with Turkey and Russia. And there was just no news to be found out about it. So, with this ominous sign that's going to happen this very night on the equinox, with the sign of the Son of Man hooking up with the sign of war, and the sign of the Father hooking up with the faithful witness at the same exact time, is absolutely off the hook. Let's just take a deep breath, ladies and gentlemen, because I'm sure all of you remember what happened as of late with the sign of the strike. Literally, the hand that holds the club that's going to strike the lion's whelp upon the cheek was flashing. It dimmed, it flashed, then it even deformed. What on earth is going on? Now, Brian, you sent me some links today about the galactic core. What say you? What did you find out today, and what are the scientists saying is going on at the galactic center?
Well, I didn't have too much time to go through that information. I actually found it through Suspicious Observers on YouTube. He posted a video on Monday, March 16th, referring to the Galactic Center. And, he talked about the superwave in there for a little bit. But apparently, I don't know if it was the end of last year or so, there started to be activity at the Galactic Center. A certain type of rave was going on. I don't want to misquote and get the thing wrong for what type it is. Started coming out, and they started measuring this. And this paper from the 16th from Arvid or Arcsid or something like that, .org, which is one of the big astrophysicist websites, are continuing stating that there's enough evidence that something is going on and it's going to continue to be monitored. So we're having action in the Galactic Center, and we have brought this up on a program not too far back. I don't remember in what context or when, but I know we were trying to find out if there was anything going on. Well, at the time we brought it up, something was going on, which is kind of rather mind-boggling, I guess.
Absolutely off the hook. Joe, your comments, your thoughts.
Oh, it's with everything going on, that seems right on time. We've had our discussions privately about a lot of these different things, and that seems right on time. So,
well, what bothers me is just the coincidence of all these things going on. We've literally been in the news where the galactic core was flashing to us, absolutely off the hook. We covered right here that Betelgeuse had actually deformed, and then all of a sudden they say, no, everything's back to normal, everything's fine. Absolutely off the hook. And this thing with the coronavirus and the stock market is so mind-boggling, it makes no sense. And I continually have people hear say that it's just hype, it's just hype, it's just hype. But now they're starting to take drastic measures. I mean, people are actually building structures at their place of employment that have to receive truckers. They don't trust the truckers, so they're going to be constructing safe rooms so that the employees don't have to interact with said employees. There's been several places that's put up signs that the doors are locked and the truckers can't go into said place of business. They have to call a phone number and someone will come out to them. So these things being the case, Joe, we also have this strange incident of these drones being sighted over ranchers' property. So why don't you weigh in, Joe? Does any of this make sense? Does any of this correlate or come together in your mind?
Yes. Yes. I don't think any of it's I don't feel that it's coincidence personally. I really don't. And the drone thing I looked into extensively, since that was here in the northeastern part of Colorado. Now I had eyewitnesses, people that I know, that I trust, that were eyewitness accounts to these, that lived on the land, and described exactly, with multiple news sources and articles. They weren't lying. This was also with the local law enforcement weighing in and investigating, along with the different government agencies investigating, but it seemed to fall away. We had all kinds of different things popping up in the news that were, whether a distraction or not, this thing fell away. Also, this just came back up. Another individual that I know that, he has no reason to lie, that spotted these same style drones over his property in Wyoming. So yeah, this is to me, looking at this and in great detail, and having individuals that are experts weighing in on this, even the manufacturers or the designers from different colleges, one being here right in Colorado, weighed in on these very things. And it would take an extraordinary amount of money to even purchase just one, let alone as many as we're seeing flying. And also made the comments that this looked more like a military style by the way that they were flying. And made comments that if you don't see a vehicle close, this has to be something much greater than just an individual playing tricks. That the range described on some of these that are manufactured now are very great, and you would have very hard pressed to find the source of whoever's flying. So yeah, a lot of information on that, and I've been covering that one or watching that very closely because it's right in my backyard, and a lot of people were very upset by it. So,
Brian, do you think that this coronavirus threat is real? Do you think it is as deadly as they prop it up to be, or not?
Well, it's got the possibility of becoming deadly. That's the key thing to take note of is older people obviously have a high chance of being affected with a fatal fatalities. And it's also people with pre-existing conditions as well, which can cause a great deal of harm. As far as it being fake by any stretch of the imagination, it's a little hard to pull something off this widespread across the entire world and have it be fake at this point. Especially with just, knowing what they're doing here locally with, keeping gatherings down to 10 people and closing restaurants at like 5 o'clock and, a bunch of things like that. There's just a big long list that's going on. That's a lot of precaution for no reason whatsoever. So I've not really doubted that the thing was real from the get-go. I didn't see any purpose to them falsifying and faking it because it would get out soon enough that it was just a big, fraud when it started in Wuhan, China.
I agree. The one thing that only makes sense to me is that this has seriously jump-started the economy, no doubt about it. Normally, the biggest shopping day is Black Friday. It is the after Thanksgiving sale, right, gentlemen? No
Yep.
questions. It's what it is. We've done Trump that by a thousandfold. I mean, we've seriously goosed this economy with these hoarders going out and buying all the toilet paper, all the hand sanitizer, all of the hand wipes, by the way. They're gone too. That has seriously goosed the economy way, 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 way better than Black Thursday did this past Thanksgiving, or Black Friday this past Thanksgiving. So that's one thing it has accomplished. If this thing is just a scare, it's at least done that. Because when we talk about the retail apocalypse, it has been unprecedented even up to this very year. We had January, and I think it was 9,000 retail establishments had closed. Now you have to realize how many employees that affect that. That's the delivery people, the people that sit in the offices, yada yada yada. You're talking about tons of employees. And I've been talking privately like this. I've said it many times to my wife and private individuals. I've said, look, I don't think we're going to have the spring hiring spree that we have every single spring. People hire for spring. I don't think it's happening this time. And if you want my honest opinion, I think that's what those CEOs knew. They knew there wasn't going to be any spring hiring season. It wasn't going to happen. There's no jobs. So That's for sure. That much has been accomplished, that we've goosed the economy. Maybe just with very low-priced items. It's certainly not a Black Friday event after Thanksgiving like big screen TVs or something like that. But literally millions of packages of hand sanitizer gone. Millions of packages of toilet paper sold. Millions of packages of handy wipes off the shelves. That's a serious goose to the economy. So, Brian, do you think that is positive, at least that way? Or do you think we're just getting started? Do you think this stock market is going to crash? And do you think this economy is going to crash? What's your thoughts?
Well, I think we're just getting started. I mean, if it keeps rolling in that direction on a daily basis, what else other, option is there left at this point?
Joe, your thoughts? Do you think Brian's right? You think we just now started just this week, ladies and gentlemen, pull up the charts, look at the ticker just for the past week. It's just boom. It's went right off the cliff. So, Joe, what do you think? Do you think Brian's correct? This is just getting started?
Yeah, I completely agree with that statement. It's just getting started. Yeah, and there's reasons behind it. You had just mentioned the store closures, and this is going clear back to 2017 that we started to witness, or at least if you went back that far, you would witness thousands of stores closing 2017, 2018, 2019, and then a huge chunk in just January of 2020. And then you couple that with the CEOs looking at this situation and saying this is unsustainable, and I agree with that statement as well. But I think a downturn in the economy personally was inevitable. Just the way things were going. I had I talked to you here in Colorado, just across the street from me. It's not even 1,200 square feet. It's like 1,187 square feet house, and it's a little over $280,000. No basement, no renovations, nothing. Who can afford these things? Matthew had stated that most of the younger individuals are having to live at home just to make ends meet. So this had to at some point do this. So yeah, I think we're just at the beginning.
Well, the state of the job market is just absolutely stunning to me. Now I've got another ominous thing to interject here, that yes, we did goose the economy, no doubt about that. But also, we've also come out and passed that now if you're sick, you get 10 paid days off, and your employer can do absolutely nothing about it. So nobody realizes that, of course, all the laborers are going to take free 10 paid days. That's going to massively affect the economy, especially with the truck drivers. Guess what? They all get 10 free days. So nobody has really looked far enough out as to what this is going to do. It goosed the economy good in the beginning, but as this thing runs forward and all these places are closed down because they have to meet this 10 people rule, this economy will never come back. Look, Joe, you was talking that you talked to a couple of people the other day that were given their final paychecks. Can you explain the mechanism behind that?
Basically, when the order was given by the government, basically, that they're going to start shutting down restaurants, especially within the airports, any place where there was, mass amounts of people, they were going to start shutting down any sort of food courts and stuff like that. So individuals that I know that their children were employed by these were handed their final paychecks, and that was early this week. That was right at the start. Basically, the employer said, "I'm done. I'm sorry," and that was that. And then even into we can look at the articles just in Las Vegas with closing down those facilities as well, of just the employees. I can't remember the numbers, but it was a very high that, and that's just a couple instances of what's going on, and with these restaurants closing, most of them I don't know have the capacity because they're allowing carry out only, or window drive up, but I don't not every restaurant's designed that way. And then the closing of all kinds of facilities, government and everything else in between. So yeah, this is I think it goes back to the first statement, I think we're just seeing the start of things.
I had somebody say something very interesting to me. They canceled March Madness, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and they've stated that nobody's going to go to the baseball games or whatever, correct?
As far as I know.
Just that. I mean, does nobody understand how much revenue is generated by, let's just take that one, March Madness. I mean, that employs a lot of people. A lot of people go to hotels, a lot of people go to restaurants, all those people go to gas stations, traveling. It literally majorly gooses the economy every spring. And now none of that's going to happen. I mean, that's staggering just in of itself when you realize how much of the economy you're actually talking about when it comes to sporting events. And I think they've even said that they're not going to have, or they're going to delay even the baseball season. Nobody realizes that's a massive blow to the economy just right there. Not that I support the sporting industry, because God knows I don't, but it sure supports and facilitates the employment of a whole lot of people. And that's what I see coming. We're going to have a catastrophic hit to the economy, because, and somebody said something to me really ominous the other day too. I was talking to an individual, and I said, "Did you see what happened to the stock market?" He goes, "Yeah, this is twice that it's happened to me. And I don't know if I want to do it anymore or not." Now, I don't know what he was talking about. He was obviously referencing his savings taking a hit in 2008. And he was willing to stomach that. But this time, they're just not willing to take the losses. I think this is going to facilitate a lot of these small businesses closing down. They're just not going to do it again. They just won't. And I personally think that Brian is correct that, this thing's just getting started. And eventually tensions are going to be rising considerably. I mean, also the president already instituted some acts that puts two naval ships off the coast of the United States for medicinal purposes. They're there for triage and stuff. Ladies and gentlemen, you need a heads up as to how the military works. If you think those military vessels are there without military escort, you're deceiving yourself. They're with a group, and they are heavily guarded. So, literally, it's justification for a staging to do something else is what it is, and everybody knows it. So, with that in mind, I don't think this is going anywhere good. I definitely think this is going to a whole lot worse places. just the economy when it comes to all these schools that's been closed. Everybody needs to realize that a lot of people that work at these schools, they're not on salary like the teachers. You have all the cooks, all the janitors, all the bus drivers. None of them get their weekly paycheck. That's all going to stop. That's going to be a serious hit to our economy, a serious hit to it. And personally, I think it's going to take us to a place where 2008 should have. It all should have been reset then, and it wasn't. It was just allowed to just kick the can down the road. But now, I don't think they're going to be able to whitewash this anymore. This kind of a hit to the economy, I don't think a lot of these businesses will be able to stay open. It's just justification to just cut the ties, let it go. So, this sign in the heavens happening on the equinox is a very bad sign. I think within the next couple of weeks, we're going places that nobody thought we was going to go, but we're going anyway. Brian, your thoughts?
Well, one thing that just kind of came to me a second ago, too, is what I said to you earlier in our private conversation about the source of the coronavirus, that it's either came from a bat or it was possibly a type of bird, I'm not sure, or even a snake or something strange. But, I mean, when you look at that fourth rider with death in Hades, well, it brings up the animals of the earth as well being involved in it. So
Yeah, it sure does.
it's something that struck me and all that.
Joe, what say you?
Yeah. I I was just thinking back to our some of the private conversations that we have had, and looking at Thursday was just no coincidence whatsoever. So yeah, I definitely think with everything going on with the sign in the heavens, yeah, I think we're in for a ride.
I don't think this is a call to panic to Christians. I certainly don't. But I think that everybody needs to be aware that it's going to take us a while to recover just from the events that are happening. Just the week's not even over. It's going to take some doing to overcome what is already in motion. This ball is already rolling downhill. And it's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. There's just no escaping that now. And I think that once people begin to realize that, yeah, that this isn't a fad anymore, we're going to have some serious trouble. We already know that OPEC has decided to start a price war with oil. This is going no place good, ladies and gentlemen. You think it is. No, it's not. Russia especially was very incensed at what they had done. And Russia seems to keep coming up. Boy, they keep getting incensed by everybody. And I don't know how long that can tarry without a reaction from them. But, we already talked earlier about, well, Turkey's provoked them. Now OPEC's is provoking them. This is going somewhere, and it's not going anywhere good. So, Brian, how can people get a hold of your stuff? I already put your Twitter up there. I'll do so again.
Yep, on that Twitter at the Bands of Time. Yeah, that's what it is, at the Bands of Time, I believe.
Yep.
Or email thebandsofTime@gmail.com, and then we've got the YouTube channel, The Bands of Time, as well.
Joe, your contact information?
Yeah, you can find me on Facebook under Joe Muzydla.9, JoeMuzyDla.9, Twitter, J Muzydla, and then email WHATFOR, the numerals 401 at gmail.com, what401 at gmail.com.
One final thing I forgot to bring up. Brian, what do you think about these earthquakes going on in Utah right now?
I really only saw very little about it, so I don't really know too much at this point. I just saw like a headline, and that's been about the end of it.
Joe, did you see these this earthquake activity? What's your thoughts?
Very, very interesting, the timing of it. Another interesting thing was individual that I work with, their husband was there and called him, let his wife know that he was safe, but it shook him up pretty good. Other than that, I have not got to look. I was just looking at the other article that you had posted on down south as well.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I think you should keep your ear to the ground. I think we are really going to get someplace different than where we've been. This is going somewhere. And everybody needs to come to terms with, well, things are going to change. They're not going to be the same anymore. Once we're done with this cycle of events, it's going to be just like 9/11. Everybody knows that after 9/11, things wasn't the same. That is exactly what's going to happen here. Things aren't going to be the same. You can find us on According to the Scripture, .wordpress.com. We're on Twitter, Matthew Miller 49. That's the Facebook page as well, it's Matthew Miller 49. This YouTube channel, of course, According to the Scripture, that'll work as well. But until next time, ladies and gentlemen, God bless and Godspeed. Keep looking up. Watch and pray. Watch and